Welcome to Seminar in Child Abuse Identification and Reporting. You will be watching a video of a live class. During the class, questions will pop up. Please answer them before moving forward.
We are a second set of eyes for children. So the family is the first and we're the second. It's really important we know what we're looking for and we're there to help assist families. And that's really what we're going to be working on for the next 2 hours. This class has a lot of sensitive subjects that we're going to be discussing. We're going to be discussing bias. We're going to be discussing race. We're going to be discussing trauma. We're going to be discussing lots of things that are hard and victimization of children, which is a difficult subject. There's also going to be a few pictures that are in this, and the reason that they're used is because you need to be able to know what you're identifying. So just giving you a little bit of warning. I am Dr. Shapiro. I am an associate professor here at Touro Graduate School of Education, and my research area is on crisis and special education in families. So this is something that I do quite a bit of work on. So let's start right away, and I'm going to share the slides with you. At any point you can't hear me or you can't hear the slides, please let me know, just shout it out. And I was very grateful for the first person who shouted that out. Otherwise, this talk would be a lot of me gesturing with no sound. All right, here we go. So by the end of this training, you're going to be able to identify risk factors and possible indicators of child abuse and neglect. And don't worry, I'm not going to read the slides the whole time. But what you should know is that what I cover in this course is laid out by New York State. And so they have developed what it is you need to know as a mandated reporter. And there are certain areas that have been added to this, such as bias, ACEs, and virtual understanding of child abuse that have been added to this class. And also I'd like to add, so what happens is when you're done with this class, you are going to receive a P for pass as long as you filled out everything you need to fill out. You're not going to see that in your Teach account right away. What you're going to see it is in your Touro account. When Touro takes all your information of your classes and turns it into the Teach account, at that point, you will receive the P, a pass of this workshop. So if you look in your Teach account tomorrow, you're not going to see it there. Just as a little precursor to this. And you're going to be able to describe at least 2 trauma-informed best practices that support family planning, that support families. So let's talk about the New York State child abuse recording process. But before we do, we're going to do a little icebreaker. And the first thing you're going to do when you're in your breakout rooms, and this is a quick little one, is you're going to introduce yourself to your partner, and you're going to tell your partner what you ate for lunch yesterday. And if you did not eat lunch yesterday, tell them something you like to eat for lunch. And we're going to do a quick little breakout room.
Okay. So what did you have for lunch today?
I had nothing because I'm kind of overdrafted in my credit card and my checking account.
Oh, I had a salad from the salad. It was really good.
Whoa. What was the salad?
It was kale and it had chicken.
Okay.
Yeah, it was good.
Well, I had a piece of chocolate, truthfully, because my associate gave me a piece of chocolate.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. I hope you're not too hungry after hearing all that. Now I want pizza from some good conversations going on there. All right. So we're going back now we're starting our talk now about child abuse recognition in the state of New York. And you are legally responsible for reporting. You are a mandated reporter. The reason is you are a teacher, or you're going to be a teacher. And a teacher is a mandated reporter. These are the other people that are mandated reporters. We've got parents who are mandated reporters, guardians, custodians, teachers, administrators. So all of these people are responsible if they see anything going on with kids under their care. So let's go a little bit more into detail about that. The role of the mandated reporter is, while acting in your professional capacity, so that means when you're in the classroom, if you see anything that alerts you to child abuse or neglect, you are responsible for reporting. Okay, so that means the kids in your classroom or the kids in your school. And it's very precise language about that. If you don't call, you can face criminal action against you. You can face a misdemeanor. You can have a civil liberty suit taken up against you. So there are legal penalties for not reporting suspected child abuse in your classroom. Now that gets really complicated because as we go on, the definitions are complicated. And one of the things that's happened with this child abuse seminar is it's asking you to think a little bit more deeply than it used to. If you've taken this course in the past, and I've been teaching this course for over 20 years, it used to be if you suspect anything, call. And it's much more complicated now. So we're going to go into details about what it means to make the call and why you make the call. Now, when you make the call, that child must be less than 18 years of age. So once they're 18 years of age, they're an adult. It no longer is a categorization of child abuse. And you have to have a sense of what happened and who may be responsible. So let's see. So let's take a look at what must be reported. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to launch my first poll here. Let's see if I can do it. This is, okay. So mandated reporters, the question is, need to have proof before they call the SCR. I see lots of people weighing in. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this. Let's see if I can share it with you. Okay, so true, people believe this is true is 42% of you, and false is 58% of you. Can someone who says false, can you tell me why you think you don't need to have proof before call? Can you explain your answer to me?
I said false, and I believe that it would be false because if you have like a suspect or a hunch, like if there's bruising or any other signs of abuse, but you can't totally prove it, you would still need to call because you think you have a hunch or you have a clue as to why, but maybe not full proof.
You're right. Absolutely. So you don't need to have proof. You are not a police officer. You're not a detective. You don't need to go out there and hunt for the truth. You need to have, as we'll go into, you need to have some hunches. You need to have some logical reason why you're calling, but you do not need to actually have proof. So let's move on. So one of the times that you need to call is if a child is in imminent danger. So you'll need to call the SCR if you think if you fail to act, a child can be harmed, a child could be killed, if it's going to happen right then, if it's going to happen very soon, if there's a direct threat, you need to immediately call. You don't need proof. You need to move. You need to move quickly. So if there's imminent threat, that is one reason you would call the SCR. Another reason you would call the SCR would be some physical indicators. So if a child is bruised, if a child has marks, which we'll show later on, those would be reasons to call. Another could be their behavior, or another could be a parent's behavior. If they come in drunk, if they come in threatening a child, if they come in very aggressively, this may be a reason why you need to call the SCR. And the SCR is the line that we call as mandated reporters to get the state involved, to get the city involved. And that line is going to put them right in direct contact with social services. Sometimes they'll call social services, sometimes they'll follow it up with the police department. So that is the line that you're all responsible for calling. So if you have reasonable call to suspect, you don't have to prove it. You don't have to, you don't have to, you can, if you observe it, if you see a child is harmed, those are the times to call. And the definition, this is the definition of child abuse. The child needs to be under 18 years of age. And a lot of this stuff I'll say a couple times because it is important. If you see physical injury, you see something that could be bad enough that a child could die or have serious disfigurement or physical, emotional health problems, not be able to function with a bodily organ. So if something's going to happen that's really going to cause physical harm, you're going to call. Those would be the definitions of abuse, and that would be the reason to call the SCR. Another reason to call the SCR would be maltreatment. And another reason to call would be neglect. So if a child doesn't have food, clothing, shelter, education, or medical care. But we're going to talk about this a little bit more. This is very much a gray area. And the reason that it's a gray area, can anybody think of some issue that might be that might cause a gray area with this?
So
Sometimes,
background and how they live, they might not have access to all these things on a regular basis.
Yeah. Poverty. Poverty is looks a lot like neglect at times. It's not neglect. You cannot give a child, you cannot call it neglect just because a family doesn't have resources. That is not an acceptable reason to call the SCR. And this is something that's dramatically changed, and we're going to go into this. But if a family can't afford medical care, if a family can't afford lots of different clothing, that doesn't mean that they're not loving and caring for their children. So we need to keep that in mind. Really, what we're looking for is a situation that is so extreme and so hard for the kid that it could really result in something very scary and very injurious to the child. So we need to be very clear when we call the SCR that we're calling, when you call the SCR, it has a huge impact on the family. So we want to make sure that we're doing it for the right reasons. So let's move on a little bit. Okay, so when to report. I think we might have another slide here. No. Okay. So we talked about reasonable cause. We call when we feel that something really could go wrong. And you need to be trained. The more time you spend in the field, that's the time that you start to really guess. You say there's something wrong here. Something terrible is going on. Your suspicion could be something as distrusting as an explanation for an injury. And once again, you do not need to have proof before you call. You are protected when you call. Underneath the Good Samaritan Act, you're protected under a lot of different acts. So you can call and you can be wrong. That's okay. You are not confidential when you call. When you call, they take down your name, they take down your information, where you work. This information can be given to the family. So it can be very sticky when you call. I have called in the past, years ago, and they did give out my information. And I've got to say, it was very difficult dealing with the family after this. It put a complete wedge in our communication, and they ended up withdrawing the child from the school. But the situation was so intense that I felt I morally and legally had a right. I had to protect the child by calling. But one of the things we want to start to think about is there a way that we can communicate with the family before we take this step? Because once you take this step, it's very difficult to go back. So you really want to make sure that you have an open line of communication with the family, that you're talking, that you have all those things in place, if possible, before making the call. So let's talk about this. You're waiting for the public bus to take you home after school, and a few people are waiting with you, including a mother with a 7-year-old child. The child's wearing a uniform of a private school in the neighborhood. The child drops her book, and when she bends to pick it up, the mother grabs her child's arm roughly and pulls her to her feet. The child begins to cry. Do you call the SCR? Does anybody want to answer? Take a guess?
I'd say no, because if that was the case, then parents would parents would get called on for a lot of small, or like a lot of acts that people just like react to without probably really meaning to do it, or I don't know. Yeah, I'd say no.
Okay, that's one answer is no. Who else has an answer for this? Who else has a thought about this?
I would also say no, given that there's no context. Like the mother could have been grabbing the child, roughly because they were putting themselves in danger by bending and picking over the book. So I don't think we have enough context in this prompt.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think we
Oh,
do
sorry.
have the context for it, because they're waiting for the public bus. So same thing. I think if they drop the book, it's reasonable to think that they're like on the sidewalk. You don't want your daughter, bending over into the street to pick the book up, so you pull her up and like kind of teach. I mean, especially a 7-year-old.
Okay. Well, you're all
I-
right, which is you did not call the SCR, but the reason you don't call the SCR is a little bit more of a technicality. You are a mandated reporter for children in your classroom. When you're at the bus stop, you are not a mandated reporter anymore. You're just a concerned citizen. If you felt that this was disturbing enough, that a child was in imminent danger, right? That this parent was going to do something that was going to cause serious bodily harm to a child, you would call a different hotline. You would call as a concerned citizen. And then on the other side of this, you're right. We don't see any imminent danger to the child. We might not like the fact that the parent grabbed the child. It might make us feel uncomfortable, but this doesn't qualify as abuse. Abuse qualifies as as somebody leaving a permanent mark on a child, causing permanent injury or death. So none of these things are happening here. It's not great. We don't love watching that. We don't like seeing a parent make a child cry, but this is not happening. In New York State, you are allowed to hit your kid. You just can't leave a mark. So you can be rough with your child. It is still legal. So just a little bit of a fact there. Unfortunately, that is the truth of it. It used to be that you couldn't, that you would call if you saw anything like this, but now it's very clear. You only call the SCR when it's something that occurs in your classroom or school. So these are some barriers to making the call. And as I said, as somebody who's called before many times, actually, it can be very uncomfortable. And these are some personal experiences. Let me know if you can't hear this.
We can't hear.
We can't hear it.
Yeah, let me try one more time to get you in there.
I think one of the
Can you hear it now?
reasons providers keep held back from making any
Yes,
calls regarding any sort of abuse, they don't want to anger a parent. They don't want to lose that trust of a parent.
Is the parent going to find out who called? Are they going to find out where I live? Are they going to find out all my information? Definitely fear, because it's fear of the unknown.
Lack of understanding about child abuse, possibly the effects that it could cause by reporting it. It could make it worse. Making the relationship suffer that you already have with a family, thinking that maybe somebody else will do something about it.
If the family finds out who called, how they would react, if they're going to pull their child from our center, if they're going to be mad, if they're going to find out where I live and come and visit me, or send me harassing phone calls.
You want to be sure you're doing the right thing. You know, sometimes you just don't know. It's a suspicion, but you do need to err on the side of protecting the child. So you want to be sure that you do what's right.
Oh, it's absolutely important to make the call if you suspect something is going on in a child's life. You've got to keep the child safe. That's what we're here for. And if it means, making that phone call, you have to get over that fear of doing it. If it means losing a client, there's clients down the line.
The bottom line is that you're doing what is best for the child, and hopefully the parents will respect that and get some help if they need help.
It's important to make the call because it's our job to protect the children, but it's also helping the family. There may be times where families are going through some very strong issues, and that call may actually help get the family the aid, the supports they need to come out as a stronger family in the end.
Yeah, so as I said, making that call can be really tough. They can find out it's you. They can ask questions if it's you. But ultimately, the reason that you make that call is because it's very dire. And you need to always ask in everything you do in education, what is in the best interests of the child? And there's been too many cases of children dying where teachers were too scared to call. So it's really important that we don't let kids suffer, that we don't let kids die, and that we know what to do when we encounter these situations.